In Rivers State, a new chapter may be unfolding as Governor Fubara officially resumes duty following a period of political tension and uncertainty. In a statement that underscores the significance of unity and reconciliation, the governor declared that peace is the greatest gift, a message that could signal a shift towards healing and stability in the state's political landscape. Meanwhile, before we delve deeper into what this could mean for governance and the people of Rivers State, let's tell you that President Tinubu is in a closed-door meeting with the governor of Rivers State, Fubara, at the presidential villa. Now let's get into this conversation. Joining me live in our studios for proper insights is political affairs analyst Ken Okolobo. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Jumoke.
You know, you and I had the most conversations about the Rivers State crisis.
That's true.
The many episodes that unfolded before and after the president intervened. But it looks like peace has finally returned to the state. Or is this too early to call?
Yeah, I think first you should give me my flowers.
Absolutely.
Because it was like as if I was predicting every step of what exactly happened. Yeah, for most of us who actually, saw this other side of it, from what those who were being, military, there's this so-called military-industrial complex. Those that benefit from one pestilence, they only benefit when there's crisis.
No, when there's crisis.
And so they didn't want to look at it objectively like the way some of us did look at it. Sometimes what some of us analysts see sitting down, a lot of people can't see it standing up. I would say peace has finally returned. You remember in one of those programs, I told you that if the Minister of the FCT can visit the governor and they have one-on-one without any interference, there'll be genuine reconciliation. People thought it was going to be impossible. And that eventually happened. In fact, one of the reasons I got to meet a lot of the minister's supporters was because of the interventions we had done a whole lot on your program. I must give it to you.
Thank you.
They mentioned it specifically to me, and some of them became my friends because of that, because they could see from the perspective we're not speaking because we're speaking on behalf of the minister. I don't even know the minister. When I was in PDP, I used to see him from a distance. So it was a case of us trying to just say it as it were. The governor has been away for 6 months. Naturally, he would have had that 6 months of reflection to actually ask himself some pertinent questions. Those who were really pushing and urging me to go on with this crisis, did they mean well? Or were they actually benefiting from this crisis? Also, the minister himself must have also had a look back. Some of the hardline approaches I did take that people were saying, you shouldn't take those hardline approaches, even though you were hurt, even though you felt betrayed. He too also have seen those lacunas. And now the House of Assembly and the governor would have to work together to ensure that those things that the administrator didn't do, they will have to do them, like the ring road, the official assembly complex. All those will have to be completed and commissioned now, so that the assembly will move into the complex. It is quite sad that the crisis, consumed the assembly complex and did cost taxpayers 20,
and a lot of money,
20 billion naira.
Absolutely.
So that is one lesson I'm sure that they will not fail to
take away from us. And also looks like the Rivers State House of Assembly is trying to probe Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas. Any justification to that?
Yes. No, but if you look at actually what it is the National Assembly that should probably probe him, because his powers were derived from the National Assembly. And the National Assembly were the ones that approved the budget. The checks and balances should naturally come from the National Assembly for his 6 months stay. But now that the Assembly is back, they're not hamstrung. Okay. They're not hamstrung in saying that, look, these monies were monies that were meant from the people of Rivers State. Where you put them into, especially capital projects. Recurrence might be difficult because recurrent must have had a template. That is salaries, wages, and every other thing you have. So, but this capital projects, maybe some he initiated, if he initiated some capital projects, it will be something that they should check. Yes, they should check to bring about the check and balance. Because why do you have the House of Assembly? Is basically because of oversight functions, check and balances, and to make laws.
All right. But now that the governor is back, reinstated fully, are there any implications for governance in Rivers State? Is there anything stopping him from governing effectively?
I doubt if there's anything now, because the truth about it is he's the one that has the mandate. He was elected, he was not selected. And so there's nothing stopping him from, he can cover those grounds. Definitely, there's no way you would say that 6 months would not have eaten into his time. Many of the things he would have wanted to do, or many of the visions he would have had, there'll be a setback. But he can cover those grounds if he works very hard with the House of Assembly. And those grounds can easily be covered. Because Rivers State is a very important state. That's why you see that.
Especially for people who say the people
when
of Rivers State.
Rivers sneezes, the nation shakes.
I said especially for people who think the people of Rivers State are the biggest losers in this entire crisis. Well,
I would say they were not losers in the sense that peace was eventually found. What if there was no peace? What if we had a situation whereby they had... Look at what happened in Nepal, for example. Look at what happened during the EdSARS crisis. What if there had been so much destruction? Of course. Because, okay, I just gave the House of Assembly as an example, the loss that was incurred. That money that was funneled into building, even if you're going to build a new House of Assembly, you could have not spent up to 20 billion naira. So that just gives you an insight into what could have happened if this peace was not achieved and there was destruction of lives and properties. So I don't think the Rivers people should feel like losers at the end of the day. They should look at it as a win-win situation, because this will now fire up the governor. One, to prove his critics wrong, that, okay, with all you have said, I can still achieve this and I can still achieve that. And the House of Assembly, too, will be conscious of the fact that, look, all this while, we have a mandate to go back to our people tomorrow to seek for election. What are we going to say we have done for the people? We need to show our constituency projects. We need to show so many of these things. You understand? So we need to have a relationship with the government, which is what we have been saying, so that we can move on.
Let's quickly look at the issues that have been raised before, during, and after the state of emergency. I mean, they say under Nigeria's federal constitution, states are meant to have a high degree of autonomy.
Yes.
And the argument about whether that intervention, the president's intervention, align with or undermine that federal principle is still on. I mean, the conversation is still on. And I wonder where you stand on that, coupled with the fact that the governor says he chose not to prove the constitutionality of the emergency rule.
You know, maybe if the Supreme Court had taken it, then we could have, first and foremost, laid this matter to rest. Remember the time of Darie, it was also challenged.
Whether the president should have intervened?
It became an academic exercise. So Darie's time couldn't tell us, Fayoshe's time couldn't tell us. And so when the 11 states went to the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court had taken it, we would have known. But now we can't tell, because I think what happens is that the president was acting on what has been happening since 1962. And so nobody has been able to tell if that power can be exercised or not. But you see, the president acted on what his understanding of what the Constitution says now, and he was backed by the National Assembly. That was the most important aspect. The Senate and the House of Reps backed his proclamation, and so maybe for future purposes, because you can't take it anywhere, it's going to be an academic exercise. The Supreme Court will have to weigh in on it, or maybe legislation could.
And the question is when. And the question is when, because some lawyers and political commentators like yourself are still convinced that if the president can effectively step in and step out of a state's crisis without judicial or legislative oversight, we may be weakening the checks and balances intended by the Constitution.
That is why I think the only way you can actually put a stop to maybe if the perceived excessiveness, if you look at it that way, it's to actually amend. If an amendment is not done, then we must have the judiciary
intervene. What kind of amendments would you be advocating?
Well, the amendment will be such that if you're going to proclaim, for example, if an elected, the House of Assembly is elected, the governor is elected, some people will say, what stops the president who doesn't like the face of a governor? Do you understand? It will now be under, just like when you're declaring war. Remember the president tried to think of amassing troops in the initial times that we had the coup in the Republic of Benin. But the National Assembly, the Senate did not concur, and the House of Reps did not concur. So maybe that amendment will be such that if for you to declare a state of emergency, you must not proclaim it. The president will not be allowed to proclaim it. You must first of all go to the bicameral house and ask for a two-third. Based on that two-third, then you can proclaim. Except in very dire situation where the state of anarchy is prevalent. But again, some people will say, should you say anarchy before you decide to go? Because the president was acting on some of the security reports that might not have been private to you or me, and that is why he took the decision he took. But what also makes you think that the president will not abuse that privilege by saying, I have security reports that are not available to you? So that's why there must be that amendment that would say that you must go to the Senate and to the House of Reps. And if you don't get that, you can't proclaim. You can't now proclaim and go to them for approval. Maybe that can also help.
But how then should Governor Fubara at this time navigate governance while trying to maintain peace, particularly in the politically charged environments like River State? Is it realistic to expect effective governance under these circumstances?
There is, but the first test for Governor Fubara will be his commissioners. Remember the back and forth we spoke about it, and I even said, if I were those commissioners, I won't go back because you have left the man, and you left because you're loyal to the minister of the FCT, and you're going back. You should look for jobs for such appointees who eventually maybe most of them became appointees of the federal government. He's in carrying out the nomination of his commissioners. I watched the FCT minister, and he says, look, I'm not going to impose anybody on him. It now shows how he would carry the assembly along.
But Nigerians do not trust
him. I know that. I know that.
And you wouldn't blame them.
So if he's able to show magnanimity in the sense that it's the House of Assembly that would also screen these commissioners and also give a leeway into nominations coming from different, especially for those who have, stakes in each of the local governments, that will show how effective he wants to be. And again, he must also have to try and put square pegs in square holes and round pegs in round holes, and not only based on political reasons. Because, what he practically has is 1.5 years. And in another 7-8 months, you're talking about primaries for election, for most of the political parties. You think he may seek re-election? What stops him from seeking re-election? But I don't know what circumstances or what the agreement would have been. But if it is genuine, and they have forgiven each other, then the first test is for him to be able to seek re-election. Especially when he performs. Performance, to me, should be determined by the people of River State and not by individuals. Or
a godfather.
Yes.
Or a guide father.
Certainly, because...
Let's get into that, because, and this is also going back to the genesis of this crisis. Like I said earlier, we had a series of conversations.
Yes, which you did.
At every phase of this crisis, whatever triggered that breakdown, the breakdown of that relationship, we don't know till date, but, and in both men have not said anything, but Nigerians have speculated. Till date, none of them have said, oh, this was what happened. But Nigerians speculated that it was a power struggle rooted in expectations of loyalty. But what risk does this pose to other states where outgoing governors handpick their successors with strings attached?
Yeah, I think loyalty is very relative. People around you matter a lot as a leader. It's people around you that determine. People just like to gossip a lot. Sometimes they just see they don't like you. They try to say things that will always bring about this fiction. And there are people that are just, they have PhD and professorial degrees in such tendencies. And I think that is exactly what really caused most of the confusion between the FCT minister and the governor. And I'm sure they've actually come to realize it, because by the time they sit together, they'll hear this person said it, this person said this. But you see, governors should learn. I've always said it. Handpick governors, handpick people. Always, there's always this 90% chance that you will definitely have them disloyal. You have people that are your supporters. You have your structure. Why not just allow somebody emerge? And whoever emerges should be loyal. Okay, ask yourself, what did Okalo and Theodore, how did they end up? How did Obaseki and Oshomole end up? How did Akpabio and Governor Udom end up? How did I think it's only Saraki, as it were, till date, that has ever produced a successor, and we never had head of crisis.
So is godfatherism bad, or it is just the way we practice it here in Nigeria?
I think it has to do with individuals too. A lot of individuals do not remember where they're coming from. Do you understand? If you remember where you're coming from, there's this thing called integrity. You must have integrity. Because if a man calls you and, mentors you and eventually gives you the atmosphere where you become a chief executive of a state, no matter how much he's breathing down your neck, I know people will say, no matter how he's breathing down your neck, you must also not forget where you're coming from as much as you want to serve the people. For me, if it gets to a point where you cannot cope anymore, I would rather walk away.
You resign.
Yes. And it holds more of your integrity than what we presently see. I think a lot of governors are actually learning, they are learning from it because the office of a governor is very powerful. It's a very powerful office. I also give it to Fubara. He did not exercise so much of the powers he had as a governor. As much as some of us, as much as some of us were against him all through this crisis, he also showed a whole lot of restraint. Some could have done a whole lot worse.
But does this also expose a deeper flaw in how candidates are selected in our democracy, where loyalty often takes precedence over competence or independence?
Oh, certainly.
Because I asked you this question around September 2024, this same question.
Yes, you did. And I kept saying that, look, integrity. Look, our internal democracy process is flawed. I remember the first time I ever ran for the House of Reps, you know, I realized that it was based on the fact that people felt, oh, the person I was running against was loyal to the governor. And I ended up coming second in that election. I was just barely 30 years old. And I realized one thing. I realized that, look, for whatever it is in an internal party democracy, once the governor perceives you to be loyal, he sticks with you. But you see, when I look at the governor today, who was the governor then, Chief James Ibori, I served under his successor, Governor Odua, as a commissioner. And I look at him today and I see the array of people that have betrayed him, so to say. I see all those who he put so much trust in then, so much, you know, he thought of, so much he built so much on, so much he never thought they would, you know. It just tells me that, look, allow people emerge when you think that they are popular. Because these same people you think you have backed, these same people you think that are loyal, they're only loyal with the fact that you're in office. They're only loyal because they believe in the fact that you are the one that is holding the red biro. The minute that red biro leaves your hand, loyalty stops. For me, loyalty should be always at every point in time. And I always use myself as an example for Governor Odua. For every point in time I left office, I think I even believe a whole lot more in him than when he was a governor. If he calls on me on any second, any day, I still see him as who I see him as my boss, as it were then. But I'm sure he knows better about most of them that were around him as at that material point in time when he was holding the red biro. And you know, you can't tell it to these people when they have this power. People come to lie to them, they tell them all sorts. And you know, the worst thing that can happen to a leader is a leader that listens to gossip. It destroys a leader faster.
I agree with
than,
you.
Yes, than because that gossip, rather confront those who come to tell you those things in front of them. And it helps so much. I mean, gossip is a norm in our society. But it destroys relationships more. And that is what has made it impossible for us to have real internal democracy in most of the political parties.
And you know, for every lesson anyone may have taken away from the Rivers episode, talking about internal democracy, have we come to a point where Nigerians should begin to demand stronger reforms in internal party democracy?
It's very important. That is why one of the things that were done today at the constitutional amendment, the Electoral Act will have to be visited in terms of internal democracy. There are 13 points. That's not what you're discussing today. I'm sure you will find time to discuss it. Because you see, internal democracy, when you get it right, you go for the main elections and you win the main elections. But one of the problems we have, like you rightly said, when you now impose people, by the time you impose somebody that is unpopular, by the time you get to the main elections, you're trying to rig the person into power. It becomes easier if the person emerged from a process that was free and fair. Less people will even leave your party disenchanted. But because you think that Ken is too vocal, Ken is too stubborn, Ken is not that kind of person you can bend, you probably go for someone who you think you can bend, and at the end of the day, the person just disappoints you. And I've always said it, that person that shows you, that can criticize you, that can tell you the truth when you're in power, is the person you should hold on to when you're leaving office. Not the one that just comes carrying your bag and everything you say, yes, sir. The person is just doing that because you're in power. It's always been proven, most times without number, that is the truth. I'm sure if the FCC minister was to turn back the hands of time, if you understand, I believe he would also have his regrets why he decided to choose a civil servant over the practicing politicians.
Loyalty over competence.
Well, I don't think Fubara is not competent in terms of his qualifications and in terms of what he has done. Competence, well, if it is competence, Fubara passes the test for competence. It was the loyalty, the blind loyalty he saw in Fubara that made him think that, oh, I won't go for the natural politicians. Those ones might likely consume me. Let me rather go for this civil servant who I have groomed. And at the end of the day, he also learned a lesson of of a time too. But you see, in all, it's a win-win situation for them in Rivers State. And I'm happy, I'm glad, and I pray that this beautiful relationship that they have started will endure and should be encouraged to endure
All right.
Up until the elections.
So if Governor Fubara decides to join the APC, do you think the APC in Rivers or even at the national level would embrace him?
I really think they should embrace him.
You think he should join the APC?
If I were Governor Fubara, I would join the APC.
Why?
Federal protection? The truth, not because of federal protection. The truth of it all is that if you look at the South now, you have only one governor that is actually PDP. That is the Bayelsa governor. And Bayelsa is a very small state compared to the other 6 states that we are talking about. I don't see Governor Fubara now looking at his left, Edo, Delta, Akwa Ibom, Cross River. It's going to be a loner. And looking at the circumstances in which he is coming from.
Wouldn't that make it interesting?
Well, because it was the same APC president that saved his job.
Well, national television. Thank you so much. I mean, Governor Fubara is back. He says peace is the greatest gift. A strong message. But in Rivers politics, time will definitely tell if this truly hurts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for